investment banking.
Hello and welcome to this installment of Idea Lab. I'm Graham Winfrey, a staff writer at Inc. magazine. I'm here with Alec Ross, former senior advisor on innovation to Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and author of the book, The Industries of the Future. Welcome, Alec. Some of the chatter we hear about technology today is decidedly negative. Robots are going to replace a lot of the jobs that humans have today, making millions of people unemployable or just harder to find a job. Then there's also the advantages of technological advances. What do you think your book is? More good news, bad news, or just straight down the middle?
I don't think it's either utopian or dystopian. I think it's a net positive book. I think that the one audience for whom this is probably negative are people who live in high-cost labor markets, like in the United States or Western Europe, who don't have knowledge-based skills. If you're making your living based on the strength of your shoulders, then tomorrow's economy is going to be a really tough one for you. But I think it's a mostly optimistic book.
Senior advisor on innovation was a job that Hillary Clinton created for you. Do you think more politicians need innovation advisors? Will that help kind of bridge the gap and collaboration between government and technology?
We spend a lot of our incomes on taxes, and I think that the taxpayers very reasonably want to see some return on investment for those tax dollars. What that means is that government needs to work more like a business. So I think it does help to bring in people who have been entrepreneurs, who have been business executives, who see public policy challenges not through the eyes of a sort of a traditional government bureaucrat's eyes, but through the kind of problem solver and problem solving that comes from business.
You say that in your book you mentioned that there's already robots not too unlike C-3PO, I think, in Japan.
The robots of the cartoons and movies from the 1970s are going to be the reality of the 2020s. There are really three big developments that have taken place. Number one is cloud robotics. If C-3PO walked into this room right now and interrupted our interview, the software would whir inside that gold gleaming body and he'd say, "Oh, excuse me," and sit himself down. In reality, the C-3PO of the 2020s will be a cloud-connected robot, and he will ping the cloud when he walks into the room, and he'll get instructions algorithmically from the cloud to tell him what to do and to excuse himself. What that means is that the hardware of robots don't need to be these incredibly expensive multi-million-dollar robots. They can be low cost. Two other developments. One is a mathematical breakthrough called modeling belief space. So things that would have once been very difficult for robots, like grasping, which is actually very complex to model mathematically. The breakthroughs have been made to do that. And then third, in material sciences. So there have been some fascinating things that have happened with things like air muscles, ferrofluids, and other things, which can make robots more human-like. Even biodegradable. So the robots of the cartoons and movies are going to be less science fiction than nonfiction within the next 10 years.
Some of the things money can buy today that it couldn't not too long ago include better communication and entertainment, healthier food, safer cars, and medical advances that keep people alive longer. You write that all of this will pale in comparison to what's coming in the next wave of innovation, and as it hits all 196 countries on the planet. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So most of my friends speak somewhere between 1 and 3 languages, right? And if you are really a global citizen, you speak 3, 4, 5 languages. I think that just as an example of some of the kinds of innovations that are going to hit, I have a feeling in 10 years, you and I will speak a couple hundred languages. And let me explain why. It's a combination of hardware innovation and software innovation. On the software side, right now what we have is Google Translate. That's really sort of the best that's out there, and it's the product of about 1 billion translations a day done by 200 million people. The advances in machine translation are going to be such that machines will be able to translate hundreds of languages at the speed of sound, and because of hardware innovation, we'll be able to put a little earpiece in our ear, and as someone speaks a language that we don't speak or understand, a little voice will whisper in our ear a language that we do understand, what they are saying, and not in Siri's voice, but because of advances in frequency, wavelength, sound intensity, bioacoustics, and other such things that can whir through the hardware innovation, we'll hear the speaker's voice, and we will hear it in the language that we want to hear. So these are these are the kinds of things that I think are going to be made possible by a combination of software innovation and hardware innovation in the next 10 years.
Unlike the last wave of innovation that brought a lot of people out of poverty into the middle class, you say the next one threatens to return people in the middle class back to poverty. Why is that?
I think you have to look at this question from a global perspective. There are 7.2 billion people who live in 196 countries on Earth. I think that for the vast majority of people in the vast majority of countries, the innovations that are going to take place are going to raise incomes. So people living in frontier economies are going to become developing economies. People in developing economies will soon be in developed economies. The challenge comes in developed, high-cost economies like the United States, like Western Europe, like a few others, where if you are just a working-class person, if you are not a lifelong learner, and if you can't take your manual skills and turn them into knowledge-based skills, then your life is going to be more difficult. It's already the case that middle-class incomes have not really increased for 15 some odd years now. And I think that they're going to continue to stagnate and reduce as life gets better in much of the rest of the world, absent people becoming lifelong learners.
You cite the fact that the digitization of money and payments has facilitated all kinds of commerce, but it's also created a lot of opportunities for fraud. Is the situation with cybercrime going to get worse, better?
This is where I'm dystopian. I do think that the weaponization of code is the most significant development in conflict since the weaponization of nuclear material. And unfortunately, I do think that security and internet security, cybersecurity, is going to be a bigger part of all of our lives. And so I think that a lot of the great companies of the future are going to be those that excel at security. And a lot of companies with multi-billion-dollar valuations, deca-billion-dollar valuations, could be wiped out if they don't harden their security.
What are some of the other ways that instability is going to be created as a unfortunate byproduct of technological advances?
I think that big data contributes to both the promise and peril of our future. And so I think that in the same way in which the application of analytics will enable us to draw intelligence out of the Pacific Ocean worth of data that we're creating, I think that one thing that is inherently destabilizing is the near total loss of privacy that analytics could bring about. When I was sitting in the White House Situation Room and when I was working for Hillary Clinton in her office for 4 years, I saw just what our analytics could do. And thanks to Edward Snowden, I think much of the rest of the world now understands what the capabilities of a very sophisticated intelligence operation is, with significant computer science capabilities. Those are going to grow more mainstream. Just because something lives inside MI5, GCHQ, Mossad, the NSA today, doesn't mean that it can be contained inside intelligence organizations. And I think it's going to grow broader, and I think that that's going to be inherently destabilizing for a lot of people.
Something interesting you write in the book is that there's no greater indicator of an innovative culture than the empowerment of women.
I didn't used to be a radical feminist, but I am now. And it's really a byproduct of traveling to nearly 100 countries, the equivalent of 25 circumnavigations of the globe, where what I saw were those states and societies that were doing the most to systematically advantage women in the economy were those that were doing best. And those that restricted the ability of women to compete and succeed in the economy were doing the worst. And there have been a lot of studies to try to determine causality, and there is some that you can make, but I really believe it to be true, and I think it's only going to grow more true in the future.